Probably the most important cog in this end times maze is a tiny nation situated in the heart of the Middle East, the nation of Israel. I personally find it quite appalling that there are so-called prophecy experts out there that slander the nation of Israel and make every attempt to distort its role in Bible prophecy. I want to assure you that Israel is very significant in Bible prophecy. In fact, don't take my word for it, but let me share with you some important scriptures that deal with the nation of Israel and the Jewish race. Firstly, a question that needs to be asked is, has God turned his back on the Jews? Why do I ask this? Well, it's because there are those out there that believe because the Jews crucified Jesus Christ, there is no longer a covenant agreement between them and God as outlined in the Old Testament. Of course, Jesus himself answered this question with an implicit no. How do I know this? Did I pull it out of a hat, which I don't have? No. Jesus' disciples were walking with him and they were admiring the beautiful temple buildings. And they asked Jesus, they said, Jesus, what will be the sign of your return and the end of the age? Jesus first tells them that the temples they were looking at would be destroyed. In fact, so badly destroyed that not one stone would remain on top of the other. He continues to describe events that would happen and then gives this very ominous warning. After stating that the temple would be destroyed, which it was less than 40 years later, he then states that the temple will be there when he returns, obviously implying that it has to be rebuilt. Now, if you have a rebuilt Jewish temple, it would also mean that you would have the Jews being back in their homeland. He then instructs the Jews to flee Judea, which today is an area slightly wider than Jerusalem, when a real bad character, which we call the Antichrist, stands in the temple and claims to be God. By stating this, Jesus declared that both the Jewish race, Israel, and the Jewish people are key to prophecy being fulfilled and important to his return. Although Jesus has more authority than all on matters of opinion, let us consider what Paul had to say concerning this covenant agreement.
I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means. I'm an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people, whom he foreknew.
Let us not forget that it was the members of the Jewish race, the 12 apostles, who initially spread the gospel. If this initial group of Jews never spread God's message of grace, Christianity may well be a minority religious belief today. But obviously, God had this all covered in his plan. This is another false teaching that drives me absolutely insane. There is so much evidence for Israel being key to the return of Jesus, and yet so many leading teachers are either oblivious or maybe they're just dead in their hearts, or even they don't believe that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. There are a myriad of Old Testament prophecies that illustrate the Jewish nation and its role leading up to the last days of human rule. I'm going to share a few with you. According to many of the Old Testament prophets, especially the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel, Israel and the Jewish nation would be scattered amongst the nations of the world, and the Jewish race would rise from the ashes in the last days. There's been more prophetic events that have occurred in the last 65 years than have occurred in the preceding 1800. Why do I say this? Let us consider some prophecies. Ezekiel 37 prophesied that Israel's rebirth would occur by name in one day. In 1948, Israel was declared an independent state. In a matter of hours, the whole world accepted that they were an independent state. This itself is a warning and a sign that prophetic events are slowly being unleashed. There are so many prophecies I could write a 200-page essay on them, but for now I'm going to focus on a prophecy of Zechariah that mentions in the last days Jerusalem will become a cup of wrath as the world attempts to divide the city. At this point in our history, we see just how the world wishes to divide Jerusalem. President Obama and his European entourages openly speak of dividing Jerusalem. This was predicted thousands of years ago. The results of the interference will shock the nations, as our God is a jealous God and a God who keeps his promises. Another well-known prophecy concerning the land of Israel and the Jewish race is found in the book of Ezekiel. According to this prophecy, the Jewish race will be at peace and in their homeland when its neighbors, with help from countries of the far north, come to its homeland to raid its riches and destroy the nation. This is another prophecy that shows how important Israel is leading up to the Lord's return. 3 times in this prophecy, the scriptures refer to this war occurring in the latter years or the last days. It also refers to the Jewish nation returning to its homeland when a horde of enemies, including Iran, Turkey, Libya, and countries to Israel's far north, whom many believe to be the Russian forces, come against the land to take spoil. The Jewish temple also has to be rebuilt. Jesus himself referred to this as an important event leading up to his return. The book of Revelation openly discusses the Jewish temple in the land of Jerusalem. We find this in Revelation 11 and Matthew 24. Even Paul refers to the Antichrist standing in the temple of the Jews when all hell breaks loose. It is in this age where Israel is regathered that many of these prophecies are fulfilled. Those are just a few of the many reasons why Israel is so important to the return of Jesus. The prophetic clock kicks in with Israel at its core. It does not take a rocket scientist or a religious scholar to realize this. With Israel at the core of end-time prophecies, there is an event that is interwoven throughout this end-times maze. It's a time period that consummates many of the prophecies found in the book of Revelation. It is often referred to as God's prophetic time clock. We call it the tribulation.